Hello, founders and investors. Welcome back to Next Round Ready. I'm your host, Chris. Today we have special guest Dave Cotter. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris. Nice to see you again. Happy to be here.
Right, Dave and I connected literally over a year ago, so I could have him on the show. So it's good to finally have this on the calendar, man. I'm interested to hear in how you help founders.
Well, a little bit about me. I'm a recovering startup founder myself. So I've been through that journey. I've lived in the trenches, as they say. Years ago, I was, I think, employee 115 at a big startup. And then after that, I said, never again. I'm not doing it. I'm done with startups. I'm done working crazy hours. Then I went back into corporate land for a while. And then in sort of late 2018, decided to start a startup with a few folks I know. And we went for 5.5, 6 years. We raised almost 5 million in capital. We ended up spending most of that 5 million, unfortunately. Didn't quite make it to Series A. Couldn't really sustain enough customers, revenue, etc. So now I'm at the point where I'm trying to help startup founders. So I mentor early stage founders to basically tell them what they should and more importantly what they shouldn't do. And then I consult with later stage startups for operations and finance in the areas of health tech, B2B, B2B2C, SaaS, etc.
Okay. I think having those advisors for a lot of founders and startups is absolutely a cheat code because you can speed run learning as a founder.
Totally.
You
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't have to like do it all from scratch. There's so many people out there
Right.
that know the path, so just go talk to them. Like you get all the
Exactly.
insight.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's not something people always pick up on. Like when we did our startup originally, it wasn't something that we were aware of or we just didn't look for it. And in hindsight, if we had done that, yeah, we probably could have saved ourselves a lot of time and effort and actually been a little more, effective on how we either raised money or attracted customers, etc.
Wow, that's and so now what's one of the glaring problems you would say that you see with founders? Like something that's just repetitive.
Overlooking the need for good customer discovery at the beginning of the process. Particularly, and it's more so with founders who are builders. So maybe they're working a corporate job, they're frustrated with something, it's something in their sphere, and they're like, I'm just going to build something on the weekend and figure this thing out. And obviously it'll probably go on more than just one weekend, even with AI. But what they don't necessarily do is do enough work to see, is this an actual real world problem that is going to allow them to actually create a venture scale company. Instead, what
Mm.
they'll do is they'll go talk to a couple of people. People will be like, "Yeah, that's a great idea," they're just getting validation as opposed to real critical thought, and they end up then spending a lot of time doing this, and they may even raise some funding, but they don't ultimately get to where they want to get to because they didn't do enough of that legwork up front.
Yeah, I was talking to when I interviewed Ron. One of the things that
Oh,
Ron
yeah,
told me was that founders should do at least 100 discovery calls with customers, and
yeah,
I think that's like the perfect number because after 100, you learn so much in that time
right,
frame. I even did that before starting this show. And I think the show has been successful so fast because before I started really pushing the podcast, I wanted to just talk to the people I'm making the show for, which is founders. And I learned so much in that time frame. Like you think you know, but you don't really know as much as you think you know until you talk to those
right,
people.
yeah. And I mean, 100 sounds like a lot. It's if And you could probably do a little bit less, but what it does allow you to do is try to go down different sort of pathways, different sort of geographies, different sort of types of businesses, different sort of sizes, etc., to understand if there really is a problem there and if it's something that you can help solve.
Let me ask you this. This is something I think about sometimes. How long should that phase really take a founder? Like to talk to 100 ideal customers to get the feedback and kind of process it. What's that kind of time frame? Because it's not something you obviously want to do for 6 to 9 months or like a year. That just seems like that's taking too long.
It does, and I know a lot of people do it simultaneously with the actual build itself. So they'll go get some feedback and then they'll start building some stuff, and then they'll get some more feedback, start building some more stuff. What you don't want to do is get to your MVP without having ever talked to anybody.
So
because
before MVP, okay, okay.
oh yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good idea to have talked to people before MVP, because once you, because the next stage after that is once you start talking to people and letting people know publicly, whether it's turning up at, like you mentioned, Ron, at a venture mechanics, let's say an open pitch. Now all of a sudden you're talking in the public. From a legal perspective, that starts the IP clock. If you ever want to try to protect yourself, you now have a year to get patent pending. So it's good to that you're not doing all this building, disclosing stuff publicly, doing a patent pending, spend all that money, and you've never actually done any customer discovery to start with. You're just wasting your time and your money. And now at that point,
Yeah, and it just seems like you'll get nowhere with that.
yeah, I mean, you might get lucky, and what I mean by that is there might be an existing product that is doing fairly well, and you're trying to do some sort of an iteration off of that. Well, then maybe you don't need as much customer discovery then, because people are obviously using this product, but now you're trying to compete with maybe a big player.
Yeah.
So your challenge now is as much about, when it comes to the actual selling part, is as much about education to be able to try to differentiate yourself from the existing player and try to come in at the right price point. And that still goes back to customer discovery. Is someone willing to bet on a product that's completely, small version of a major product, take a chance with you? And if so, what features do they want to see in there? What price point do they want to see it at?
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of successful founders start off with like one feature in their MVP, one thing, get a problem solved, and then you kind of build that trust with the customers, and they're more willing to give you feedback. And really, sometimes you can charge for it, and you start making money. I think that's when you have something that you know is a winner, when you can solve one problem really fast.
Right.
You don't have to take a year to make the MVP. And then you can actually charge for it, even if it's not your ideal price and it's not enterprise level or whatever.
Yeah, no,
that solution is big.
Yeah, I'm mentoring a couple of companies right now, and both of them are doing what you would call paid pilots. So they're not necessarily charging what they believe they will eventually charge, and the product isn't necessarily fully to what they expect it to be eventually. But you're getting a lot of good feedback from the people who are using the product. Personally, I think it's better to have a paid pilot than a free pilot, because a free pilot doesn't really incent the user to do anything. If they use it, if they don't use it doesn't matter to them.
I agree, because then it's like some skin in the game.
Exactly.
Even $100 is a good starter, because then you got something. I think anybody vibe coding right now, whatever product you're putting together. And I'm telling you this because I'm doing it myself. A product I vibe coded is out there and people pay $100 for it monthly. That should be the goal, because then okay, I'm making money. It's something that's useful. You get them a result. After that, you go and build the whole product outside of that, and where it's, more technical and all of that stuff. But I agree. It's just a better starting point to have people pay. The whole I like it, but I won't give you money is just a crazy thing to me.
And to be honest, if you're doing good customer discovery and people are giving you those types of responses, that's much more valuable than someone saying, "Oh, this is great. Let me know when it's ready." They're just pushing you off. They probably have no intention of ever using it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, and just on customer discovery, because I know you like to be able to give your audience things to sort of chew on. So if they haven't read the book, The Mom Test, they should. I don't know. Have you heard of it yourself, Chris?
I heard so many things about it. I had to read it. It's incredible. That's the best thing that you can do as an early stage founder, because no matter what you want to go and build, you can then use that same process over and over again. You now have the skill. That's a book that you got to study, not necessarily read.
That is true. And then once you've read it, then it's hard. To your point, then you kind of have to study it again. I have seen some good summaries out there, but they mean a lot more once you've previously read the book to start with. You can't just read the summary and expect it's going to make sense.
Okay. So we got customer discovery down in
Right.
that early stage, because a lot of my founders that are listening are in that pre-seed, seed stage. Sure. What's another way that you really serve founders in that early stage area?
Well, my background is finance and ops. And so obviously I can help, whether it's trying to understand your model, trying to understand your burn, how to put processes on something that, because you're growing fast, you need to figure out how to actually make not just the processes work together, but make the people work together. It's something that I would say founders don't always think of when they start, which is, now I'm the lead. People are going to be looking and listening to everything I say, and I have to now be able to lead this company, this collection of individuals who may only have met each other last week, and basically grow a company based on what I say. Knowing that on the weekends I'm screaming at a TV screen on sports, so like, how am I a leader?
Oh, right.
And so there is definitely a lot of, when they do get into that situation, I find a lot of them think, oh crap, that's not me, I can't do that. So you're going to have to coach them a little bit on understanding, listen, you built this great product, you've gotten some traction so far. You are the person. You just need to, start being human a little bit. A lot of times they'll get so focused in particularly builders, get so focused on the build that they kind of forget to be human with the actual people who are working for them, who are looking for, a lot of times, just a little bit of empathy, a little bit, tell them thank you every now and again. That really helps.
Yeah, I agree. That's left out. I think there's this persona in the startup world that some founders try to put on of like Steve Jobs, where they have to yell and be mean and aggressive, and like that's gonna get the job done. And I just
Right.
don't think that. I think it's a form of leadership for sure, but it's not the only one. There are other ways to lead and delegate and just positive feedback, all kind of things you can do versus just taking the aggressive shouting approach. That doesn't work on everybody.
No, it certainly doesn't. And it was one of the things when we were intentional about it when we did our own startup, because we had worked for so long in corporate. So my other co-founders were like, well, we know what it's like to be shouted at. Let's not do that ourselves to our people, because if nothing else, we want these people to be happy and to grow. And if they decide to move on, it's because they've grown as individuals within the workforce and now they've found some other opportunity somewhere else, as opposed to they're pissed off and they're leaving because they want to go to a steadier, more stable environment.
Mm. And when the early stage startups, how can founders really avoid that kind of chaos? Is this something that, I won't say it's mandatory, but is this something that you see where founders are constantly dealing with that? Like it's just chaos when they bring in the wrong team members or trying to manage the finances or just dealing with everything that comes in the early stages. How do founders manage all of that?
Sometimes it's a trial by fire, unfortunately. I think knowing what your strengths are is important. So what am I good at? And who can I surround myself with who can complement me? So it's, a lot of startups don't necessarily have a COO, but it's like whoever that right-hand person is, whether it's a chief of staff or whomever, they should not be thinking and doing the exact same thing as what the CEO does, because now you're just got two people doing the same thing. One of the things I would say, one of the learnings we made early on in our startup was that I was the COO and the CEO were both very similar. So we ended up sort of gravitating towards the same problems, which is not what we need to do. So at one point we said, okay, you're going to take these areas and I'm going to take these areas, and then we'll come together every so often to meet to make sure everything's good. But there's no point for both of us to be in the same meeting at the same time. It doesn't make sense.
That's a good rule. I like that. We do not need to be in the same meeting at the same time, because it just can become overkill. And then that becomes burnout. And then you have people that are tired of opening their computers and getting on Zoom and on camera and stuff. And I get it. When it's a waste of time, it makes so much sense.
And it also is confusing for the other people in the meeting. Who are they listening to? If I'm the operations guy and I'm in charge of operations, then why is the CEO in the meeting? And then why is he the one making the decision? Why isn't the operations guy making the decision? And vice versa, if the CEO is in charge of, let's say, product, which he was, why am I in that same meeting? And why am I challenging him? No, I shouldn't. It should be just the CEO talking to the product guys. So
yes,
that helps from a chaos perspective. I think particularly like early stage when there might only be 2 or 3 of you, knowing who to then surround yourselves with. And knowing you don't necessarily have to bring on someone full time. It could be part time, it could be fractional, but someone that you've talked to them, they have similar types of values, they see where the company is going, they understand what the company is about. Ideally, you've gotten some sort of a recommendation from someone prior, so you're not just bringing in someone off the street.
Yes.
Then you can sort of meld everyone together. It's a little bit easier than just throwing a bunch of random people into a room, hoping it works out.
Yeah, 100%, man. That the referrals are a big deal in this space as well. I'm finding that the relationships when you are as a founder trying to raise capital are super important. But it's also important if you're hiring, if you are trying to expand in different ways, if you need help with marketing or whatever. It's one of the underrated things about this industry are the relationships, because I find that most people are actually super helpful. Like, very rarely do I reach out and ask somebody for help or a connection or access to an event and they tell me no. Usually it's like, yeah, I can help you out, or I know somebody who can. So It's like, as a founder, you just got to be bold enough to ask, and then you can probably get a lot more.
Totally. And it's something that they don't necessarily understand straight away. That the worst thing someone's going to say is no. And most likely, to your point, 75% or even higher will say either yes, we can help, or yes, we can't help you directly, but I'll know someone who can help you. And it's huge. It's huge. And it's also something, when we did our startup, we were in quote unquote stealth mode. So we sort of tended to do everything ourselves. And I think if we had learned that lesson or knew ahead of time, let's go talk to other startups, etc., see what they're doing, it would have helped us grow a little bit better and more effectively.
I was going to ask if you have any, like, not regrets, but just things you wish you would have done with that 5 million to just climb a little higher and ascend further than you actually did. Because I know it's painful to look back on and be like, yeah, I messed up, but I also think that's what makes your perspective so valuable, is you've been there before, where most founders want to go.
Yeah. Regrets. I mean, obviously everybody wants to, become a unicorn company, but, I would say not so much regrets, but maybe just lessons learned. I think to my earlier point about customer discovery, I don't think we fully did it. We did enough work on customer discovery and ICP early on. We were fortunate in that we were able to raise money quite early without actually having a finished product. And we raised it from a strategic investor who was also going to be our biggest customer. So I think there was, in the back of our heads, we're like, okay, now we just need to build this thing out. They're going to buy. We should have, at that point, gone and looked for more additional customers and actually proved out the thesis, first of all. Because we spent a lot of time on, building a product for them. It was during COVID, so it was hard to validate. And then when their operations team said, no, we'd like you to be integrated with our electronic health records, because we were in health tech, then we had to figure out how to do that. So we spent a lot of time working with this customer that eventually used us sparingly.
Okay. I see where the problem came in at. And I wonder how many people tried to start companies during COVID and just ran into that wall. It just seems like so many people tried then, and it just, because the world was in such a weird phase, such a weird time.
It was definitely a weird time. Yeah, and like I said, we were health tech, so even though part of our agreement with them as an investor was that they would give us space, we didn't want to be like near a hospital system, and they didn't want us anywhere near there either, from a health perspective, from a safety perspective. So yeah, it's interesting times. As far as what I would say to founders, what you can learn from that, I think once again, knowing your ICP early on is huge. Knowing how easy it is to acquire customers, not just the costs, but also acquiring them and then integrating. Like if you have a low revenue point and it's still taking you a long time to actually find a customer, and it's taking you a long time to then get integrated with them, that's just a lot of friction. It's hard to scale off of that.
And that sounds super manual.
Yeah, and we had a bit. We definitely had some of that, and we were in health, and so there's the whole HIPAA thing, and a lot of other stuff that goes on. So when you start bringing in compliance into it, it gets a little bit more complicated. And a lot of startups, now I hear them and they're like, "Yeah, we're getting SOC 2," and I'm like, "That's great, but do you need to get SOC 2 right now? Because once you get SOC 2, you're going to need to maintain that on an annual basis, and you're pretty much going to have to go Type 2 because Type 1 doesn't mean much." So that not just annual, you're literally having to do it on a monthly, quarterly basis. You're going to have to maintain everything in there. So do you have the resources to be able to do that? Does that customer that's looking for you to get SOC 2 compliance, are they part of your ICP? Can you afford to maybe say, well, let's not use them? It goes back to the old expression of, not all money is green. And it applies a lot when it comes to fundraising, but it also applies when it comes to sales.
I love it, man. I'm glad we could have this conversation because I think the pre-seed founders I have spoken to, they have a lot of the same problems. I see a lot of the same things. So having these kind of conversations is something I'm always trying to do to just help kind of guide through that process because it's really strenuous. And a lot of the content out there is more so tailored towards seed or Series A companies who are already kind of off the ground. They've raised some capital, they have a significant team, and they're already further ahead in the process, but some of the beginners, they just don't have as much help and guidance as I think they need.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would suggest accelerators are definitely a good idea. A lot of times they'll take money, so you look for the accelerators who aren't trying to take money from you, or you look for accelerators who are just offering classes. Like, for instance, you mentioned Ron earlier, Ron Wiener. So Venture Mechanics, who's local to Seattle area where we're both residing, they have a customer discovery class, which is, I've taken it as a mentor just to see what they talk about, and it's very, very insightful. It's like 2 to 3 hour class, goes through a lot of different things, and it's something that, as an early stage founder, particularly if I'm trying to figure out customer discovery, I'm doing my build at the same time, trying to figure out how this whole startup world works. It's a great class to take. And then it leads you into other classes like, how should I be thinking of things from a legal perspective? When should I set up my company? How should I be thinking about finances? How do I create a model? Who do I talk to about all this?
Love it, man. And I think I do agree that the founders have to diagnose the different accelerators. Don't just chase them down and try to get into the first one. Find the one that fits you and what you want to do. But before we go, I definitely want to hear like your favorite piece of advice to give the founders in this early stage process.
Favorite piece of advice? I would say enjoy the process.
That's a good one.
It's depending on your circumstances, because some people are younger, some people are older, some people have gotten let go, some people are still in jobs. If you're going to go down the route of actually doing a startup, know when you are going to commit to it full time. It will be chaotic, but you've also got to enjoy it. I was talking to, just over LinkedIn, with another company founder who we were in the Alchemist Accelerator a few years ago down in the Bay Area, and he was in that, and I was talking to him about how much they've grown since then, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm so focused on what's happening now and trying to hustle and get sort of the next sale that sometimes it's hard, you have to remember to kind of look back and realize we've come a long way. We need to celebrate that and enjoy that as we're continuing forward.
And what a good breakdown. Man, that's a good one. I haven't heard that one before. Enjoy the process. We ignore it like enjoying what you do is a bad thing. Like, that's important. You got to enjoy what you do.
Exactly.
Or it just makes it easier to do it every day. Like, I couldn't.
Yeah.
Some days I sit right here and I record podcasts all day from like 9 to 3. Like, if I didn't enjoy it, I could not do it.
Totally. People talk about like purpose-driven companies, but as individuals, we have to have purpose as well. What's getting you up in the morning? If you're getting up in the morning and you're going to have to do 6 hours of podcasts, you better enjoy it.
Yeah.
You better want to do it.
Or you won't be here long. You will not be here long.
Or what will happen is your enthusiasm wanes, your drive wanes, and then at that point, it's like, you're probably, to your point, you're not going to be there much longer.
So founders, make sure you stay locked in out there. Take care of yourself. Dave, thank you so much for being here, being such a great guest.
You are welcome, Chris. Great talking to you again, and let's do this again sometime.